Hey, how's it guys? It's MJ, the student actuary, and in this video, I want to talk about private equity. So, what I want to do is use this like lattice structure that we've been going through, and yeah, just make some connections around private equity. So, like we did in the last video, all I'm going to be doing in this one is just joining these various concepts with some sort of links. So, let's zoom in and chat about each one. Whoops. Moved a bit around there. Um, so yeah, one of the things when it comes to private equity is to have a good sort of administrative team. And you get your administrative team, you have a nice software system to record all your transactions and your deals and all those type of things. But specifically, if you're a small fund, you will be doing a lot of outsourcing to say compliance management and all those different things. One of the most important things when it comes to private equity are the actual like investors who are going to be managing the funds, making the choices, what company should we invest in, and how should we go about the deal. So expertise we will see is very important when it comes to private equity. So and then yeah, like I said, same with how some administration could be outsourced. You can also outsource some of the expertise. So later on, we will be looking at the different styles of private equity, and you might not be an expert in all of them, so you will want to then outsource some of those things. Very important when setting up a private equity is to have a good business plan. Say how everything's going to be done, and all those type of things. Also important in your business plan is you'll say where you guys are going to be located, where's the office going to be. Specifically, like if you're a tech private equity fund, then you want to be located in, say, Silicon Valley. Reason being, you want to be situated close to your clients. Sometimes you get your clients in private equity by relying on your own personal network or your work relationships, things like that. So I mean, this is the one thing about private equity is that we think, oh, it's all about who can, do the best valuation, who can do the best research and analytics. But a lot of the time, it comes down to relationships. If you know a lot of people who have lots of money, then it's much easier for you to set up a private equity fund than for someone who might say have all the expertise and a brilliant track record, but doesn't have the same network. Look, you do develop a network by getting a good track record. You get a good track record, it will turn into a network. People will start talking about you, saying, "Hey, there's this guy. He's getting like 50% annual returns. That's a great track record," and people want to get to know you. Although in order to keep those networks, you need to sometimes be a little bit confidential. Some people don't like to tell people that they have lots of money. They want the investments to be discreet. So, as well as having good track record and management ability, you also need to have these personal skills and know how to manage your relationships. And sometimes with relationships, it could affect the fees. You might reduce fees for certain people. Certain clients you might charge a little bit less to keep that relationships. Fees are important in private equity because remember, overall, it is a business. I mean, these things you don't set them up because it's a hobby. You set them up because you want to make money. So profit is a very important aspect of the whole private equity game. So yeah, important that your fees are high enough to cover all your expenses. I should maybe actually add that as one, is that these private equity guys do have expenses. Just include that one there. So yeah, your fees will want to cover the expenses, and then if your fees are more than that, you do get a profit. So they will be connected. And then it's important to see how you structure your fund. What's the vehicle that it's going to be under? How are you, going around registering it? Because this will have an impact on your tax. Also, more profit you get, more tax you're going to get. Another thing to realize is your office location will put you under a certain jurisdiction, which might also have a different tax rules, in the sense that some people might set up their hedge fund or private equity fund in, say, Bermuda or the British Virgin Isles, and the reason they do this is to get a better tax position. Because one of the big things with private equity is to reduce this cost of capital, and you can reduce the cost of capital if you can get favorable tax treatment. So this is one of the main things with private equity, is that they get cost of capital really low, and by doing that they can take a fee, get some profit. There's a little bit of business in it. Let's look at some other things. I mean, like the usual thing with most of these funds is reporting is important. Having a good governance structure is important. Governance then also leads into reporting. Reporting leads into valuation. How much is your fund worth? How do you go about valuating it? That might even be something that you specify in the business plan, and this will be one of the ongoing operations that you do. Also, a very common ongoing operation, like I said, is to get that cost of capital to be as low as possible. Interesting thing with private equity is that when it comes to, say, reporting, if your company does really badly, some people just close up shop, they don't report it, and we get this thing called survivorship bias, which means we're only reporting on the winners, which means private equity looks way better than it does. Everyone's like, wow, private equity on average gets 30% returns. No, it's because all the losers just don't report. And I mean, that's kind of a little bit of like a governance issue. Maybe as governance, you want to comply with regulatory compliance, and I think they are making rules that saying even if your fund fails, you do need to report it so that we can reduce that survivorship bias. Also, if you get less on the benchmark, you might also choose not to report it, which can further reduce the whole survivorship bias. Let's see what else there is. I mean, private equity and regulation, it's something that's getting regulated more and more, because which private equity wants. Regulation, I mean, we kind of always think of it as like a bad thing, but it can be a good thing. If we get regulated and they imply some restrictions and they make sure our corporate governance is very good, then what happens is that we can then open up our funds to pension funds and other big boy institutional investors, which can then give us much more capital to play with. So regulation is a good thing. It can improve governance, although regulation does become a little bit of an administrative burden. So you have to file up more reports and all those type of things. Regulation might put in some restrictions around this thing known as financial gearing. So what could happen, specifically depending on what vehicle you set your fund up as, what you could do is that you get someone as an investor to put in, say, $10 million, and then you gear it. So you take a loan for $10 million from the bank, and you use that to buy bigger deals and do all these type of things. So this is one of the financial options that you have. Regulation, depending if, say, your pension funds or something like that, they may have something to say about your financing options and gearing, and saying, oh, actually guys, we think that there should be a restriction on that, so you can't gear too much. So you can't like take 10 million and then borrow 200 million. That might be too much of the gearing. There might also, regulation might also give you, say, limits. So say you can't invest in, say, tobacco companies or companies that aren't socially responsible. Then the limits that you have imposed, they need to be reflected in your benchmark, just so that you can do a proper valuation to see if you have done any value add. I think maybe let me add that as another little token here, is value add, because that's after all what you're wanting to do. like I said, you're setting up a business, you want to reduce the cost of capital, that's your value add to society, and that's why you are going to be earning that handsome fee, which will be turned into a profit. So benchmark, value add. Just on a more general thing, people do like pension funds, private equity, because they do offer correlate. They're not correlated to all the other asset classes, which means that there are some nice diversification benefits. So if the whole stock market tanks, your private equity is not going to be as correlated to that. Another thing with limits is you might want to limit the withdrawals. And the reason for that is because withdrawals will hurt your liquidity. That's the one thing why some people actually don't like accepting pension fund money, is because they call it lumpy. They say the money is lumpy. So it comes in one big go, and then you're like, okay, well, how do we deploy this 100 billion? But then when it gets removed, they withdraw 100 billion, and that can throw you into some serious liquidity problems. So one of the things with financial gearing is we do it in order to, say, maybe increase our liquidity, but liquidity is an important thing. Specifically, you don't have the stock exchange where you can just sell your shares the next day. If you buy 10% in a company, then the only way you're going to sell it is if you can go and try and find a secondary market, which are very, the market capacity of these secondary markets is quite small. I do see there are these sites online that offer these things known as alternative exchanges, but they're very small, and they do kind of, liquidity is still a big problem with private equity. It is something that these alternative exchanges and secondary markets are trying to change. The problem being is that you'll see these guys will take quite heavy transaction costs. I think they'll take like a 5% fee or something like that, which is much higher than if you were buying it on, like, say, a stock exchange. So transaction costs are important, and yeah, they link up with liquidity. Transaction costs, I guess, in a way, it's the cash flows, and if you can't afford the liquidity and all those type of things. But let's see, have we kind of done the whole? I think we've done the whole administrative side of it. Now let's look into the more exciting part. So private equity, one of the other important things is to know your investment process. So how are we going to go about buying these various companies? The one thing to ask is, what style are we going to be deploying? You get the fun, sexy one, which is the venture capital. You give money to these young startups and hope that they make you millions, like investing in, say, Facebook or Snapchat or something like that. Then there's, like, say, development capital, where a company is doing really well, but their organic growth is too small. So you think, hey guys, we can boost them up. Let's give them like a little shot in the arm of some capital to make them go bigger. Management buyout is when the managers are like, we actually really like this company, we don't like our shareholders, let's buy the company out and take control, but we need money in order to do that. Then you get stuff like leverage buyouts, where it's kind of like, oh, let's help out an acquisition, we want to buy out a competitor. You get restructuring capital. This is when the company's doing really badly, bad management, but you feel like you can come in, give them some more money, shake things up, and you can potentially start making more money, make it a more profitable enterprise. So these are the various private equity styles that you can do. Also, part of the investment process is to have a good due diligence. Also, I guess, is to understand your financing options that you have available. Another good thing, part of the due diligence, is to do good research and analysis, because you want to make sure that whatever company you invest in, specifically with private equity, that they have some sort of comparative advantage. You want to pick that up in your research and analysis. You You want a company that has got, that special edge when it comes to their product or their service or something like that. I mean, what you could even do is you can come in and actually say, as private equity guys, we're going to take an active role in this company. We feel that we have the expertise to, bring in innovation. We can bring in more strategies and resources, and we can, open the doors with other synergies with the other companies we own. And this can all feed back and give the company a competitive advantage. I've got funds of funds there. Maybe that one's just gonna come back to that one. So yeah, we might have also part of our due diligence. We might have various investment criteria. Investment criteria might say, okay, we need a certain market penetration, or the product has to be a certain thing, like technology, like we're investing in apps, and then that would be, the certain sector that we're in. And yeah, we want to make sure that we've got good market penetration in that sector. So we can bring this one down here. I mean, because when part of the market criteria, or I guess this is coming with the restructuring capital, is we can add better leadership capacity, better management, and one of the reasons for doing so will be to, increase market penetration. And yeah, I think even with leverage buyouts, you want that leadership capacity. So sometimes a private equity fund will buy out a company, and they will restructure the management. They will change the management. They'll put in their own team that they think will be able to do the job, and hopefully they believe that this will, contribute towards good growth. Although maybe let's put growth over there. Management can help growth over there, and then yeah, because once you have good market penetration, you can get growth, and then you can also get growth in that sector. I see, yeah, I didn't connect funds of funds. So what you can sometimes happen, I think we should where should we put this one, is you can either invest directly in companies, or you can be a private equity fund that invests in other private equity funds. So I guess that could actually be part of the research and analysis, is, maybe be a fund of fund. Then that would be like almost the opposite of taking an active role, is going with funds of funds. But funds of funds do increase your transaction costs. You do have double fees and all those type of things. But there are some synergies, I guess, in having funds of funds, in that you are getting more diversification. So I mean, look, this lattice structure it's not perfect. I mean, there's many different ways we can restructure it and play around with it. But the idea is to just see that when we come to these big questions, and they say talk about private equity, or what you would consider in setting up private equity for 20 marks, this shows us that we do have enough points to talk about, because we can talk about each point, and we can talk about each point's relationship with all the other points. So there's a lot to discuss here. I mean, we could write a book on this lattice structure, but like I said, it's not perfect. Like I said, diversification and funds of funds should maybe be connected. Value add and fees should also maybe be connected. Growth and valuation. So there's, just because something's on this side of the lattice doesn't mean it can't be connected with that side. So this is just to show some of the connections, but I mean, that's the beautiful thing about finance, is everything is intertwined more and more. But there we go. That is the lattice structure for private equity. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time, and I don't know, if you guys enjoyed, we'll do another one. Cheers.